Howdy, friends. Thanks for listening to the Roundup Podcast. In this season of the podcast, you will hear breakout audio from College Discipleship Conference 2024. If you have any questions related to the breakout session, please send it to collegiate@sbtexas.com. And don't forget, follow us on social media at SBTC Collegiate. Now, enjoy the podcast.
What I'd really like to try to get at today, I'm going to share a little bit of, I'll expand a little bit more on the story I shared last night, and then kind of just share some practices that have been life-giving to me that I hope will be, they're nothing new. Like, this isn't like, hey guys, I just cracked the code on Christian faith and intimacy with Jesus. And so that's not what happened here. I think, were all y'all here last night? Okay, that's helpful. Almost everyone. And so, this is like kind of my typical breakout that I do at Roundup or CDC. And so, some of you are like, oh, he's just going to tell us to like pray again. And so intimacy with Jesus, like, I don't know, how many of y'all are on your leadership team as a college student? Like, that's your role. Or how many of y'all are solely a part of a college ministry? You're not on leadership, you're a student, and just a part of the college ministry? Okay, great. How many of y'all are on staff in some form or function? You're an intern, staffer, you high-level volunteer, just really good-looking person who helps out around the church. This is Richard Woodard. I wasn't talking to, like, some female in the room. And so Richard and I, he was at our sending church. And so, sorry, I'm really uncomfortable right now. It's like there's a whole row of females behind you. And so there is no shortcut to intimacy with Jesus. There's also no long-term pathway in ministry without intimacy with Jesus. And so if there's one thing that you and I should prioritize in our Christian life, whether that be as solely a follower of Jesus or whether that be in vocational ministry in some form or fashion, it must be intimacy with Jesus. There is no other replacement. This is the battery pack for the Christian life. This is the lifeblood of what will sustain us. This is what it's really all about. God did not reconcile us to himself just so we could work for him. He could do all the work himself. Like he could do it. He reconciled us to himself for the purpose of relationship. And so why would we be reconciled to God in relationship with him and then neglect, as the author of Hebrews would say, such a great salvation? Why would we then set that aside? I've set that aside numbers of times because I think there's more pressing things, whether that be raising a family, whether that be starting a church, whether that be lots of meetings that you have to go to. And I go, well, I just don't have time to meet with God. And God's always with me, so it's great. Like, I pray all the time. The number of times I hear people, I pray all the time. I don't think you do. Like, I know some praying folk, and I don't think you're just like praying all the time. You probably do a lot of things. And we have to do a lot of things. So what does it look like for us to cultivate a deeper intimacy with Jesus? For a long time, I have had a discipline of waking up in the morning. It was easier before we had children because then like I can wake up when I want to wake up, not when someone else smaller than me decides when I'm going to wake up, which is great. I love our kids. They're wonderful. Not the biggest like baby fan, but we're back in that stage again. So my wife is. She's all about the babies. I'm like, I'm not all about the babies. I love our children. Don't hear me wrong. I wish I could show you a picture. I'm like objectively a beautiful family. And so, but I would wake up in the morning and I would have time reading God's word and journaling. That was like my thing. And it was a prayer journal. So it wasn't like a Dear Diary. It was just prayer. I'm just praying to God. I'm very easily distracted, so I needed to write it out. I have bad handwriting, so I type it. So we have a sectional in our living room, and the corner of that sectional is very deep. Why? Because that's where I sit, and I have a good amount of mass. And so it sinks quite a bit now, but that's where I meet with Jesus. And for years and years and years, I will wake up in the morning and go sit in the corner of the couch with my legs up, with a pillow on my lap and my iPad. And I will journal my prayers. I could pull up some journals. There's some that I'm like, I think this should not be in any cloud. And I will delete that. Like, I could be incriminated if someone actually read what I just wrote about someone else. And those Psalms are in the book, like, go read the book of Psalms. David could have gone to jail for some of those. And but that was my habit. It would be the equivalent of plugging in your phone and then taking it off and going throughout the day. And that worked really well. It was wonderful. I had a wonderful time with the Lord. Sometimes that'd be 15 minutes. Sometimes that'd be an hour. Sometimes that'd be an hour and a half. Like, I wasn't stressed about how long it was. There was a season where I was stressed, like, this has got to be an hour. Otherwise, I didn't really meet with God. But that was always such a source of life for me. And so let me just begin. Part of what I'm going to say is how you connect with the Lord is very important. Is very important. Relationships are different. God made all of us different, okay? Some people, like me, I could go Guadalupe River State Park, one of my favorite state parks in Texas. I can go to Guadalupe River State Park, hang up my Eno, and it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. Jesus himself is going to meet me there. Like 100% every time, Jesus himself is going to meet me in an Eno by the Guadalupe River at Guadalupe River State Park. Guaranteed. There is something about a river and the outdoors away from a city where God just meets me there. That you might hate the outdoors. You might go outside and go, where is God? Like, we have a guy on our staff team. He's that way. He's got really bad allergies. When he goes outside, he wonders if God has abandoned his life. But that's not me. Like, I love the outdoors. So how you connect with God is super important. And you don't have to be freaking out about, like, oh, well, I've got a journal because that's what Chris said, and like, he's a pastor. No. I don't know what that is for you. I have to write because I'm easily distracted. Case in point. Like, I need my brain to focus. And so typing for me slows my thoughts down and forces me to, like, more patiently connect with God. So as we go through this time, I'm going to share quite a bit. And my hope is I'm somewhat offering, this is not how I preach, but like a little bit of a buffet approach, okay? So like, hey, I hope there's things that are helpful for you. Some of this might not be the season you're in, okay? So if you're in here and you're like a young mom with babies, like, yeah, you ain't having an hour and a half in the morning. That's not a thing. You were up 3 times in the night wondering where God was, and you're probably not going to wake up like an hour and a half before the kid wakes up. The kid's already awake. Like, this game's over. And that's okay. So what does it look like for you to connect with God? The goal is intimacy with Jesus, not some religious activity, okay? The goal is intimacy with Jesus, not some religious activity. But for a long time, that has been my discipline. Wake up in the morning, like an iPhone charger. I'm plugged in. I'm fully charged. I've got my time with God, and now I go, okay? So here's what happened this last fall. A really exciting time in our church, just like to be more candid. The Sunday before students moved back in, we had 70 people in our church, which is like, that's pretty fine for our summertime vibe at our church. Like, all the college students are gone. We got our families and some random students. And it was like, this is great. The Sunday after move-in, and last semester a big Sunday was like 150. The Sunday after moving, we had 240 people at our church. And I'm like, my goodness, where did all y'all come from? And all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm a big deal. We're doing it. Like, this is happening. Like, we're doing the thing. This is what they talk about. Like, this is that moment in our church where it's about to blow up. This is so fun. Hey, God, I ain't got an hour anymore. So I'm going to trim a little bit of that, because I've got important things to do now in my day. There's now a whole lot more people that are going to need leadership, and they're going to need direction, and they're going to need care and counseling, and they're going to need me. And so I started trimming a little bit of my morning time, and in the midst of that, we got a baby, and you've heard me share about babies already. So babies aren't good for routines. And I love routines. My goodness. I love a very boring week. It's wonderful for me. But I also started working in the evenings. I bought a lie that my job is to be with people. And so I need to be with people when people are awake. And I can do the non-people stuff at night after my kids go to bed. And so now I have created a pretty regular rhythm of being with people all day, every day, in between 8 and 5. And then after the kids go down, then I'm like writing sermons, working on emails, doing admin, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm doing that till about 10:30 or 11. Why? Because we've got this big growing church, and this is super exciting. And surely they all need me. Meanwhile, this pain starts developing in my chest. I'm super anxious. I don't know what's happening. I'm still like present as a dad and loving my wife and loving my kids. I'm not like a a-hole at home or anything like that. Like, still like a nice man. But I'm hustling because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I begin to feel more disconnected from God. And I was still praying. I'm still meeting with the Lord in the morning. Like, I mean, you could go read journal entries from that time. I'm not freaking out in the time. I'm just like, Lord, we got work to do. This is fun. We dunking lost people. This is great. This is the dream. Nobody's like freaking out right now. They're just coming to faith. This is awesome. And I thought I would not have told you something was wrong in September. I would have said, we are having the time of we have arrived as a church. Like, we have found our stride and we are flying. This is great. But some disciplines started fading. And my time with the Lord became a little more fleeting. And again, it was just this morning time. And then I'm going. From 6 till 11. Pretty much nonstop. Not all work. Like, a lot of that's family time. And family time, that's important. And it's a lot of work. 3 kids, y'all. You Woodard folks, man, that's a different ball game. I thought 2 was like chill. 3 is chaos. Anybody got 4 kids in here? No? All right. Yeah, well, that's why you're here learning. Like, you can still have time with God. After 4, I don't even know what that's like. You're just going to get raptured. And so it's all starting to kind of feel a little more tense. The pain's not going away. I'm increasingly more anxious. And I'm talking to God about it. I mean, I'm talking to my counselor. I'm talking to my wife. I'm like doing the things. But I'm still going 110, 120%. And again, I want you to have this picture that for a very, very, very long time, I would have led this breakout. And I've said, you guys need to have a wonderful time with the Lord in the morning. And you do. And you do. And I would probably be like, some of y'all be like, well, I ain't got time. And I'd call you all liars and say, you have time. And it's going to be just fine. You wake up, you go to bed, stop going to so many parties with all the same people that already know the Lord, and go to sleep and wake up early. And that's what I tell you. I say, go read your Bibles and pray. Breaking new ground there. But that's what we need. And we do. But then I would pull the phone off the outlet and I would go. And if you have an iPhone that's older than 2 years, you know that battery don't make it a whole day for some reason. It's because they're a business. But my battery pack wasn't holding up now for the day. It wasn't working anymore. Not that time with God is supposed to work for me. But the connection was being lost. The intimacy was being strained. Until, as I shared last night, it all kind of came undone. And part of how it came undone, just to share a little bit more candidly, part of why I share is because I want you to know, first of all, like I have not arrived. I thought our church arrived. It has not. It's a hot mess. It's the Lord's hot mess. It's not mine, but it's the Lord's. He's going to take good care of it. I'm a hot mess. And that's just kind of what things are on this side of heaven. So I need you to hear, like, I'm a little bit crazy. And God's still doing super fun stuff with my life. I don't have this all figured out. I have not arrived. I'm just sharing with you, hey, here's what God's doing right now. Here's what he's teaching me in the Word. Here's what he's teaching me about following him. But I'm just like you. I'm just like you. Just as in much desperate need of Jesus as you are. And my wife says to me, well, hey, pre-Chris, she said in the summer, hey, when are we going to slow down? I said, girl, let us get through kids camp, and then things are going to go slow down. That's the first week of June, all right? So the spring semester is a little more chill than the fall. You don't have all the move-in hype and all of that. But now I'm a pastor. I really miss just being a college pastor, where I got like the whole summer off, and it was wonderful. That was a great job. Now I preach most Sundays. Families don't leave for seasons. They're there and they need care. And so I said, it's going to slow down after kids camp. Kids camp's like our big thing, and it's been awesome, and it'll slow down after that. Well, then this is something that was new to the job. I'm like in charge of a budget, and that's terrible. And so we're like, I've got to start this finance team, and I got to get this budget approved. So it's going to slow down after July when I get the budget approved. She said, you know what month comes after July? I said, I'm not sure. She said, August. You never slow down in August. August is like Christmas for retail. There's people everywhere. And so I know it's not going to slow down in August. It'll slow down probably after September. Like when we get to October, girl, we're going to be cruising. She looks at me in September and says, hey, you said that in April. So when is the month actually going to come that you're going to quit lying to me? I said, oh, you find a wife like that, y'all. All right, you find a wife that's so anchored in the Lord, she ain't got no problem telling her man about what God's supposed to be doing in my life. You find one like that. While we're on that subject, this has kind of become a thing for me at this conference to just say, hey, if you are dating someone right now, this is like a thing. I just look forward to this moment. If you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend right now that is not currently following Jesus, you should probably break up with them. That should happen like this weekend. I remember this sweet girl last year. You would have thought someone died. And it was like, she's just being set free from a fool. That's what's happening. It's a good thing. But if he's not making disciples now, he probably ain't going to disciple your babies. So just quit that. Save yourself a lot of time and energy and move on with your life. They'll be just fine. It's called the removal of idols. They'll survive. And pray that God meets them there. But don't waste any more time in a foolish relationship. And if you're like, well, they are following Jesus and y'all are sleeping together, you're not following Jesus. You're playing games, all right? I'm surprised how many of our college students are sleeping together. I'm like, Lord have mercy. Is this just like a thing now? Apparently it is. Y'all don't do that either, all right? It's going to be worth the wait, I promise. Well, Chris, it's not that easy. It kind of is. Like, it really, you just don't get in the bed together. That is pretty black and white here. Chris, this is not about intimacy with Jesus. It is. You're looking for intimacy. Jesus is there offering it to you. You trying to find it in a boy or a girl? Or both. It's 2024, you know? I mean, who knows what you're doing? And it ain't there. And the whole while the Lord's saying, come unto me and I will give you rest. And we're like, well, I got too much to do for you, Jesus. He says, that's not how this works. So Ashley calls me a liar, and I said, okay, girl, I'm going to listen to you. And I realized something actually is wrong. I just shared I had chest pain and panic attack, and this is not good. So then I stopped everything. I'm so thankful for our church. I'm so thankful for our staff team and local leaders that allowed me 4 weeks of literally, like I did nothing for the church. I just realized I needed to breathe. Hadn't really taken a break since we planted in January of 2020. who've been through some stuff. And I needed to catch my breath and reconnect with Jesus and spend a lot of time with my family. And part of that included going away on a 24-hour retreat with my counselor, kind of spiritual director, named Jeremy McCowan. And in that time, the Lord really uncovered a lot. One of the biggest things he covered, this is just for fun here, was a huge engine of my life is a longing to be the hero in other people's stories. I was so desperate. Like, I want to be the hero in someone else's story. And because of that, then I have this like insatiable desire to be impressive. Do you want to know the only place that I have found where I cannot be the hero and it does not matter if I'm impressive? It's in the quietness of the presence of God when I'm by myself with him. And so what happened in the fall, in hindsight, is I began spending most of my time publicly and less of my time privately. This is part of what Steve was talking about this morning. I was being conformed to a pattern of the world. A great pattern, like we're changing lives and things are happening. God's moving. It's wonderful. But there's a pattern there of public performance instead of private intimacy. So in November, when we hit pause on everything and like my whole life stopped and it was really wonderful, I discovered that I need a lot more than just a morning time with God. That what if Jesus actually invited us to walk with him the whole time? Like, what if the phone was never taken off the charger? It just stayed connected. And that actually is what I was doing. I was like staying connected to Jesus. And I would be like, okay, we're going to connect like a ton right now. And then I'm going to run that juice through the day. And I'm going to reconnect with you tomorrow when I'm like depleted. I need to be filled up again. And a lot of people think of Sundays like that. Like Sundays, it's like morale boost in my spiritual life. But what if the invitation was actually to unceasing connection with Jesus? And it is. And it's the best. So here's some of the differences now, and then I'm going to get real practical. I'm showing up to meetings differently now. Like before, August, September, October, I'm showing up to meetings like these two ladies are a part of our church. Like, let's say I was meeting with them. This is a little embarrassing to say out loud, but they love the Lord. I would show up to this meeting and I would be thinking this: what do I need to do to help you both follow Jesus more, and behind that, benefit the progress of our church? And kind of like, hey, how can I be a key part in the story of this like wonderful moment of what God's doing in your life? And because I want to be a part of that. And so in some ways, the meeting is really just about progress. We need to move forward. We need to get going. We got lots of work to do. So if you're going to be a missionary, you're going to be this, you're going to be a house church leader, then we just need to get on with it and get moving in that direction. Instead, now, here's what meetings are looking like. Not all the time. This is pretty new. I'm still trying to learn how to follow Jesus here. I'm praying for the people that I'm meeting with before. I'm just saying, Lord, the one thing I want to offer them is the wonderful news that you're so much better than I thought. My church, here's what I found out in November. My church, help me, Lord. They don't need me. They were dunking people in November. And their pastor was gone. You want to know what happened? They just realized even more who their actual pastor is. Who our church actually needs is not some crazy redhead. They need the Lord. And the only thing I actually have to offer our church is the Lord. So perhaps the best gift I could ever give is intimacy with Jesus, and invite more and more and more people to intimacy with Jesus. So it's impacting our calendar. Like, we're going to schedule less things in 2024 as a church. Why? Because we want intimacy with Jesus. And if our staff can't run at a pace of doing all the things and have intimacy with Jesus, we're going to slow down. So I went from having probably 4 to 6 meetings with people a day to now 1 or 2. And here's the thing, I'm actually embarrassed. Like, I regularly feel embarrassed by that because I'm retraining to realize that I don't have to hustle. But like, if my board were to ask what happened this week, it would be a lot less than what I thought I should be doing. But the other thing was going to kill me. And God didn't want that. He wants me. He wants my whole heart. He wants love and affection from me. And he wants that from others. And I cannot be the pastor that God's made me to be. I can't be the husband that God's made me to be. I can't be the dad that God's made me to be if I'm not intimate with Jesus. That's all I actually have to offer. And while I might think I can offer a lot of leadership advice and relational coaching and these kind of things, all of that is just overflow of intimacy with Jesus. I've become more convinced that the best gift you can ever give somebody is what comes out of your own intimacy with Jesus. Why? Because the gospel is found there. I've got a guy in our church who's going through some stuff, and I just said, hey, bro, here's what I hope is true. A week from now, 6 weeks from now, a year from now, that you and I will look up together and go, I didn't know it was this good. I knew it was good news, but I didn't know it was this good. That's becoming my prayer for our church, that we would look up week after week after week and go, I didn't know it was this good. I didn't know. I can't believe it's this good. I can't believe that Jesus actually loves me. The hot mess, the overweight mess, the can't stay committed mess, all the mess. He loves me. And I don't have to perform. I don't have to keep climbing some ladder. He just loves me. And I'm feeling the weight come off. As I say, thank you, Jesus, for an invitation to the one place that is completely free of performance. It's just intimacy with him. Intimacy with Jesus. That's what we're after. So a little more practically, what is that looking like for me? There's a very old Christian practice called praying the hours. For some, that has been every hour, pausing and praying. For me right now in this season, that's looking like 3 times a day to pause and connect with Jesus as a practice of being connected with him all day. And here's what I'm finding. I'm finding like, oh, wow, that was a lot of hours that just went by without me thinking about Jesus. Like, this is taking some mental and spiritual retraining in my body because I grew very accustomed to just saying, hey, Lord, thanks for the word. Let's go get him. And then we go. And I felt like the Lord was with me, but like, I just wasn't turning to look at him. You understand? Like, I'm running side by side with Jesus instead of just staring at his face and saying, hey, isn't that pretty good? You want to look at him with me? Because this is the best view ever. And so for me right now, it's looking like in the morning, I still have the morning time. It still is kind of like this sacred, like secret place I have with Jesus. And I cherish that time. And right now, like if I think my kids are going to wake up at 6-ish, like that means I'm waking up around 5-ish because for me, like I need space. I feel a little claustrophobic sometimes, specifically with babies. So like, woohoo! Something about a baby crying. It's sanctifying for your brother. And That's Ashley's full-time job. She just meets with kids that cry all the time. That's literally her full-time job. I'm like, that woman, I'm not sure she's real. She might actually be an angel. But I need that time. And then because I'm scheduling less meetings, now I have some margin. I didn't know what margin was. I thought that was something you spread on your bread. And now I've got space in my day to actually like pause and say, okay, Lord, let's like check in from the last few hours. Like I've had some calls today. Like this morning, talking with a woman about what she needs to do as her husband's walking away. We need to talk about like legalities of divorce and child support and making sure credit cards are separate in case he does something. That was 8:00 this morning. That's a lot at 8:00. But I've been beholding the face of the King as he's making it rain outside since about like 5:15 this morning. And so we had a prayer call with our church this morning. We're doing this thing right now. And y'all, I didn't know fire from heaven could come at 6:30 in the morning on Zoom. There was fire from heaven this morning. And so now I'm able to engage in a place where, yes, I have like practical work to do. But what I really get to offer is just intimacy with Jesus. I'll share one more story and then we'll get to the practicals more so. There's the lead custodian at our church, at our school, the school that our church meets at. His name's Mr. Alonso. And he's just kind of the best illustration in my life right now, in like my weekly life. He's an older Hispanic man, and he loves the Lord. We actually got to share the gospel with this new custodian together the other week. It was like some of the most fun ever. And he's probably late 50s, early 60s. And just, any Hispanics in the room? Just like, man, like, you know your abuelo? He's just like the best. Like there's something about like an abuelo and abuela that are just like, man, there is space there in their heart and in their home. Like maybe this feels weird for a white guy to be talking about, but like, man, I grew up in Houston, so like I've got some abuelos. And it's like, man, there is something about this man that feels incredibly spacious. Like there's no angst in him. There's no hurry in him. There's just lots and lots of room. And here's what I know to be true about Mr. Alonso. The gospel saturates his life. He's marked by it. Mr. Alonso, I'm convinced, knows a lot more about Jesus than I do. And he has no seminary degree. Here's what he does have. He has intimacy in spades. He has decades of being alone with God in ways that I don't know yet. I want a soul like Mr. Alonso. When someone's with me, I want them to feel, dang, like there's a lot of room here. But I think some people will be like, sometimes when I'm with Chris, I feel a little suffocated. Like I feel a lot of pressure to like do some stuff for the kingdom. And I'm still working that out. Like I want to see some stuff get done. But I'd rather have this like to feel spacious. You know what it's like. I mean, Christmas break. Y'all were probably with some family members that make you feel a type of way. Like, I got to perform for this one. Like, I got to do this and do that. I got to really make sure I said thank you for this Christmas gift. Otherwise, they're going to be so upset. And they're like, you've got those family members. Then you have family members that it doesn't matter what you do. They're just like, oh my, I'm so proud of you. You could have like failed out of college. And they're just like, every time I see you, I just can't help but smile. That's like abuela status right there. Like, that's what abuela does. And I want to be like that. How do we get that intimacy with Jesus? So here's a little tool. This is kind of newer for me. Some of y'all might have heard of it. I'm not like a sponsor or anything. But it's a prayer book called Every Moment Holy. Anyone heard of this before? Okay, a few of you. I got the other two for Christmas. It was wonderful. I was so excited about it. It's a prayer book. There's lots of these. This is just like an updated for like for our cultural moment, if you want. There's an older one called The Valley of Vision, which is like an old Puritan prayer book that makes you feel really holy when you read it. Because you're like, I don't know half these words, and apparently I should feel far worse about myself than I do. But that's Puritan life. And so Every Moment Holy is just a prayer book that has been so helpful for me to help me pause and connect with Jesus. Now, in the morning, this is my prayer book, okay? This book, there is no other book that is like this book. There is no other book like this book. This is eternal Word of God. Okay, this is a supplemental tool. Let me be very clear about that. Ain't no blog going to give me what this can give me. It's the eternal Word of God. And if this is hard for you, just spend more time in it. It's the eternal Word of God. This has become a helpful gift for me. I'm going to share this one. This is going to seem maybe so silly, but oh, this is embarrassing. Here's some things I'm doing in my slowing down life. I planted a rose garden in our front yard. My wife is allergic to flowers. She's allergic to a variety of things. And I love getting my wife flowers. She's wonderful. And me and Bruno, we got that. Like, I should have bought her flowers. And I'm like, I'm going to get them. I'm going to get those flowers for my girl. And so, but they can't be in the house. So I was like, here's what we're going to do. It's also economical, if you're taking notes here, because now it's only a one-time purchase, and it's a gift that keeps giving. And so now I've got like unending flowers for my wife every time. I'm like, look at those roses. I got those for you, girl. So literally, before I left for this trip, I just took pictures of the roses. I sent them to her. I said, those are for you. and my 4-year-old daughter, and it was the sweetest. And now she doesn't have to sneeze when she looks at them. And so there is a prayer. It's called Every Moment Holy, and this is really what I'm in pursuit of, is like, how do I live a life where every moment is intimacy with Jesus? How do I live a life where every moment is intimacy with Jesus? You need to have time in the morning. This is like, how do I lose weight? You eat less and you exercise, okay? How do I have intimacy with Jesus? You meet with him in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I don't care. You're a human, and things happen in the morning. You wake up. You should wake up to Jesus. Okay, before I share this, I'll share. This was like so helpful last year for me. And so if you're new to this breakout, then this is for you. A little book called Habits of the Household. If you haven't read it, it's phenomenal. Of course you have. And Habits of the Household, wonderful book. He says this about his little girl. He said, my little girl wakes up in the middle of the night and she thinks there's a monster in the room. She's terrified. She's freaking out. And so I run upstairs. I run into my little girl's room and I say, hey, what's wrong? She's screaming, crying. Daddy, there's a monster in my room. There's a monster. He knows there's not a monster in the room. And he says, what my daughter needs in this moment is not some type of rational explanation about a monster. She needs a better story. I said, where is he? He's over there by the closet. And okay, baby girl. Well, I walk over to the closet. I grab that monster by the tail. I throw open the window. And I said, baby, I got him. And now I'm spinning him by the tail. And I chunk him out the window. I say, he's all gone. Daddy's here with you now. And it's only Daddy here with you. Daddy, thank you so much. And now she can rest in her father's arms. He says, here's why I read the Bible in the morning. Because I wake up to monsters in my room. And I need a better story from my Father to be spoken over me. If you wake up to your social feed, you wake up to monsters. If you wake up to the news, you wake up to monsters. If you wake up to your to-do list, you wake up to monsters. If you wake up to the Word, you wake up to gospel intimacy and a better story. Okay? That was super helpful for me. Okay. Now I'm going to read. I'm very embarrassed to read this. My wife is going to laugh hysterically when I tell her that I read this. This is a liturgy or a prayer for planting flowers. Okay? Like, this is what slowing down looks like now. Wow, this guy's super weird. So a lot of them are just prayers, and a lot of them are liturgies. So like there's a leader and there's people. I'm just going to read it as a prayer. In a world shadowed by cruelty, violence, and loss, is there a good reason for the planting of flowers? And the response, yes. For these bursts of color and beautiful blooms are bright dabs of grace, witnesses to a promise, reminders of a spreading beauty more eternal, and therefore stronger than any evil, than any grief, than any injustice or violence. Well, what is the source of their beauty, and from whence does it come? The forms of these flowers are the intentional designs of a creator who has not abandoned his broken and rebellious creation, but has instead wholly given himself to the work of redeeming it. He has scattered the evidence of creation's former glories across the entire scape of heaven and earth, and these evidences are also foretastes of the coming redemption of all things, that those who live in this hard time between glories might see and remember, might see and take heart, might see and take delight in the extravagant beauty of bud and bloom, knowing that these living witnesses are rumors and reminders of a joy that will soon swallow all sorrow. Well, in the planting of these flowers, do we join the Creator in his work of heralding this impending joy? Yes. In this and in all labors of beauty and harmony, praise and conciliation, we become God's co-workers and faithful citizens of his kingdom by acts both small and great, bearing witness to the perfect beauty that was, to the ragged splendor that yet is, and to the hope of the greater glory that is to come, which is the immeasurable glory of God revealed to us in the redeemed natures of all things. What then is the eternal weight of these flowers? Though our eyes yet strain to see it, these tiny seeds, these bulbs or velvet buds we have planted, are more substantial than all the collected evils of this groaning world. Their color and beauty speak a truer word than all greed and cruelty and suffering and harm. Well, what is the truer word spoken by these flowers? They are like a banner planted on a hilltop, proclaiming God's right ownership of these lands long unjustly claimed by tyrants and usurpers. They are a warrant and a witness, each blossom shouting from the earth that death is a lie, that beauty and immortality are what we were made for. They are heralds of a restoration, what will forever mend all sorrow and comfort all grief. They declare a kingdom of peace, of righteousness, of joy, of love, and of the great joining of justice and mercy into a splendid perfection in the person of a king whose wonders will eternally upwell, beautifully beyond the grasp of human imagination. You're never going to look at a flower the same way. And it's things like this. Maybe that seems really cheesy to you. But literally, that was my afternoon pause. Was planting some roses in my front yard and saying, hey, God, where are you in this? And so now, real practically, here's what slowing down and spending time with Jesus is looking like for me. I still have my morning time. I journal. And in my journaling, let me just share this. This is like a very standard kind of thing for me. Is 1 Peter chapter 5. 1 Peter chapter 5. Let me just write this down. You don't need to turn there right now, but write it down. 1 Peter chapter 5. Come on, Petey. 1 Peter chapter 5. It says this in verse 6. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you or lift you up, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Okay, so if you're newer to spending time with Jesus, here's a tool that I've used for years. Humble yourselves, therefore. This is 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. This is like a pattern of prayer. It's typically how I model my morning time with God. I want to humble myself under the mighty hand of God. Okay, so to do that, I need to think rightly of myself and rightly of God. So I'll begin by just declaring who God is. I'll just say, God, today I'm reminded that you are faithful, that you are true, that you are constant and unchanging, that you are full of steadfast love and mercy. And I'll speak of who God is, and I'll speak of who I am, both in God's eyes and in my eyes. God, today I'm anxious. Today I'm burdened. Today I'm tired. Today I'm really missing my family. Today I'm nervous about making it home on time. Today, whatever that is, I'm really pissed off at this loser who left his family. Like, whatever that is. And I'm honest about that. And I can be very honest with God. He's not scared of my honesty. I can say things that might even be sinful before the Lord, and he's going to sort that out. I'm going to say, Lord, I feel a type of way today. And he can take that. Like, if there's one place I can be super honest, it better be with Jesus. He already knows all of my thoughts. And so I'm going to lay that out before God. And then I'm also going to be reminded of who I am in his eyes. Today I'm chosen. Today I'm fully loved just as I am. Today I'm free from having to perform. Today I have no need to be impressive because God already said I'm his son. So I'm humbling myself under the mighty hand of God. I'm thinking rightly of him and rightly of self. And then in verse 7, casting all your anxieties on him. And then I just begin to list my mess. Like, Lord, I'm anxious about this. I'm anxious about this. I'm stressed about this. I'm freaking out about this. I'm concerned about this. I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know how this is going to work out, or this, or this. And I'll just list them. Like, here's all the things that are racing through my brain. And then it says, because he cares for you. And then I'll begin to number one by one how God has demonstrated his care for me. God, I'm thankful that in the midst of some chaos, I get some time at this conference with some of my best friends in the world. That somehow the Lord set aside time for me and John James to get a lot of time together this week. That in the next 6 days, I'm going to get a lot of time with Chris Cummings. That the Lord is in pursuit of caring personally for me. I'm thankful that Saturday morning, I'm able to leave here and go coach my son's basketball game. That I'm going to get that time with Caleb. And I'm just going to list out like, hey, God, here's how you're caring for me right now. I see that. I see that care. Let me briefly pause just for a second and share kind of a pastoral thing I'm noticing right now. We're old enough as a church now to have had a number of people walk away. And I don't mean like we're going to go find a different church. I mean like we're done. Here's a common denominator of every single one of those people. They stopped being grateful. They stopped being grateful. When they stopped being grateful, they either walked away from their spouse or they walked away from the Lord entirely. But what is true of every single one of those people is they stopped being grateful. And so just as a brief aside, part of what I do in all of my time with the Lord is I thank him. And I try to be really specific about what I'm thanking him for. Because I want my brain to be saturated by the news that Jesus is constantly meeting my needs. He's constantly caring for me. He's constantly providing. He's constantly at work. And that's a habit of gratefulness. And so I just plead with you, if you don't have any current habit of gratefulness and you want intimacy with Jesus, like be a more grateful person. Jesus is there. He's present in that. I cast all my anxieties upon him, and because he cares for me, I celebrate his care. That has been a pattern of prayer for me that has sustained me for many, many years. I'll share that with you. That might be helpful as a tool. So I had my morning time, and then in between the hours of 12 and 3, like at some point in between 12 and 3, I'm going to pause again. I'm going to make sure like either this in between meetings or it's something. And I'm not like checking email. This is what I was doing. I was checking email. I was preparing for the next thing, like trying to knock out a few more tasks before the next meeting. And now I'm just saying, I don't know when that's going to get done. Literally, I've got some emails right now that I'm like, oh, Lord. And they're all about budgets. And I'm like, I ain't got no help here. I'm probably just going to mess things up. And so, like, I don't know when that's going to get done. Hopefully next week sometime. But it ain't happening this weekend. I just want to be with Jesus and be with y'all this weekend. And so I'm going to pause in between 12 and 3. And there's some prayers like for the hours in this little book. There's also some Psalms that have just been like a consistent great help for me. Psalm 77 is one of those Psalms. Psalm 40 is one of those Psalms. And there's some really dark ones that have been pretty helpful as well, like Psalm 68, 69, more lament type Psalms where I'm just like, oh, someone else felt this way. Like they're tired of crying. And like those are all in there. And so I'm going to pause. I'm going to like reestablish my connection with Jesus again in the afternoon. And so this might be like in between classes and you've got that hour and a half break. And instead of like seeing some friends or playing some Fortnite or FIFA or like whatever that is for you, like it's okay to have more than one quiet time a day. And this is rocking my world. That's super embarrassing to say out loud. Literally, when I first started doing this, I'm like, but I already did this today. Like, I already read my Bible and prayed. And God said, yeah, that's not the point. The point is intimacy with me. Do you talk to Ashley once a day? No, you goose. You text her all the time. Why? Because you're crazy about her. Because you want to be connected with her. Because you don't like being away from her. Then that's what I want with you. And so somewhere in between 12 and 3, I'm pausing and I'm reconnecting again. And in the evening, typically after the kids go to bed, we have kind of a nighttime routine that allows us to connect with Jesus as a family as the kids are going to bed. But then after the kids go to bed, instead of just immediately watching the next show or whatever that is, or doing all the dishes and laundry, it's somehow multiplied tenfold in between the hours of noon and 6. I'm just going to be with Jesus again. I'm going to kind of process the day with him of hey, here were things that happened today that I'm angry about, or I'm sad about, or I'm excited about, or God, here's some things that I'm kind of curious about how they're going to work out. And so now I'm connecting with Jesus again, and I'm doing that also at times with Ashley. And so instead of us just dumping our days to each other, now we're also taking time of spiritually connecting together and praying for one another at the end of the day. And here's what I'm finding. I'm just finding I feel a lot more chill. Shocker, what's happening? I'm being taught moment by moment that God is actually God and I actually am not. I think that's an overflow of intimacy. And when I don't have intimacy, I'm going to be really insecure. I'm going to be really anxious. I'm going to be freaking out about all the things with all the people. Why? Because I'm becoming convinced I'm God. Intimacy with Jesus guards me from that. It's the most secure place I know. So why would I not want to cultivate that all throughout the day? And so I would commend this book to you as a tool. It's been incredibly helpful for me. I shared this last year, but there's some prayers I prayed daily, and that felt foreign to me as it just felt too religious. But God's been doing good work in that. These roses, as silly as it is, they need watering. It's a daily thing. And I give them the same water. It's not I gotta spice it up every time. Water them differently every day. It's okay to pray the same thing every day. God's gonna do good work in that. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for you all in a generation that's progressively being more marked by depression and anxiety, that you guys could actually become Mr. Alonzo's in your friend groups, because you have the opportunity to cultivate a spacious soul by having deep intimacy with Jesus. I'll say this, and then I'll stop talking, and we can do question and answer if you want. You can ask anything. It doesn't have to be about this. You'll never have more time than you do right now. You'll never have more time than you do right now. There was a really sweet season in college where the Lord had captured so much of my heart. I mean, I felt like I was giving everything to him. And I would spend 2 hours with the Lord in the morning. I'd spend an hour praying and just talking to God. And I'd spend an hour reading and studying the Bible. I don't have that in the morning anymore. And I miss it. Now, perks of the job, I get to study the Bible a lot as my job, which is baller. But I that time was so sweet. And so I would just encourage you, college student, if that's your season right now, you will never have this time again. So why not invest as deeply as you can in something that's going to pay dividends for the rest of your life in intimacy with the one who loves you most? You have that opportunity right now. Chris, I'm so busy. I get it. It's a lie. It's a lie from someone who's telling you you have so much to do, and that lie will always be there. But you have more time right now and less responsibility right now than you will ever have in your life. So maximize it. And get yourself a booster on intimacy with Jesus in the season that you have. And so, Lord, I pray for each of these here. God, I pray that they would hunger for intimacy. And God, I pray that in the next few minutes of having some time of question and answers, that you would help continue to teach us about what it looks like to pursue you, to hunger and thirst for righteousness. And God, I pray for each of us that you would give us grace to prioritize intimacy with you. So help us, Jesus. And if I've said anything that wasn't helpful, would you delete that from their memories after this time? But God, I thank you that you've brought each of these people here to say, God, I want you to be most important in my life. And so, Lord, would we demonstrate that in how we spend our time and our thoughts from this day forward. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thank y'all for coming. Let's take, I don't know what time this ends. That's a classic Chris Millar thing. Just give me a mic. And I'm like, well, we'll end when we're done. So let's take 10 minutes. Questions? 2 minutes. Oh, Lord have mercy. See, Richard knows. Yes, sir. Shane.
Thank you for remembering my name. Do you intentionally set a standard of intimacy with your family together, like as a practice? Or do you just do your intimacy and then you're like, hey, son, how are you doing with your intimacy? Hey, Ashley, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Or is it something that you do together and you've been finding that's important?
Yeah, great question. The question was like, what does that look like with my family? My son's 7, so I'm not quite asking like, how's your intimacy at this point? I will probably need to soon. But so again, I would commend a book to you, especially to those of you that are parents. Habits of the Household, phenomenal book. But basically what we're trying to do in our household is have daily habits and weekly habits, like and monthly and yearly habits, that are digging ditches that we're begging God to fill up with His Spirit. And so every night, like we do thankfuls, prayers, songs, and memory verse. Like that's our nighttime routine. So we do thankfuls. Every person has to do thankfuls, even if they're in a bad attitude. And they have to list multiple things from the day that they're thankful for. Ella, that's my 4-year-old daughter, to this day is always thankful for mommy, and oftentimes like it's just mommy. I'm like, girl, we gotta work on this. And so like we're trying to cultivate that gratefulness. And then we do prayers, and someone prays. There's a prayer that I pray regularly over them that includes, hey God, I'm so thankful that you love us. I'm thankful that you love us when we have good attitudes and when we have bad attitudes, that you love us when we make good choices and when we have bad choices. Here's what's really cool. 3 months ago, my daughter prayed that prayer. And she prayed. My 4-year-old daughter said, God, I thank you that you love us when we have good attitudes and when we have bad attitudes. When we make good choices, and she had like just made some bad choices. And so I think she knew what she was doing in this moment. But like she's learning. I want her to have that vocab. And so we do prayers, then we do songs. We sing an old hymn, like a classic Christian hymn. We sing a different one every month, and they can learn it. Like they will know the hymn by the end of the month, and it's baller. Kids' brains are insane. Like I can't do that. And then we do a memory verse, and so every month we do a new memory verse, and so that's like one of our anchor rhythms for our family. And there's other things we do, but so I do have standards for what we're doing with our family. That's what that looks like. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel about like balancing like secular entertainment versus like Christian entertainment and like music?
Great question. Can I tell you something? I should not. This is being recorded. Ashley and I downloaded and watched the Eras tour the other night because I had massive FOMO. And I actually love Taylor Swift. I can't believe I just said that out loud. I've always called myself a closet fan. But I didn't watch all of it because some of it got a little crazy. And if you don't know, praise God, you're holier than me. And so how do we balance secular entertainment versus like just the word? Do I just read the Bible all day and read Christian prayers? I don't. I do right now. I'm going to lose all my reward in heaven. But right now, we start our year as a church. We start each semester with 21 days of fasting and prayer. A typical part of that includes giving up all secular media. And so like no non-Christian music. We don't do any shows. It's crazy. It's almost like God knew what he was doing when he wrote Romans 12, 1 and 2. Like our brains become different. And so I don't listen to like a lot of secular music normally. But there's some. But when I turn all that off, like it's crazy. Like my brain becomes sharper. I've now been off social media since November. I don't plan on going back. And I'll tell you, like I thought for so long I can't make that jump. Like I can't do it. I can't get off. I'm too influential. Help me, Jesus. I really am a sinner. Like I could convince you. I really am a sinner. And guess what? I got off, and people still are hearing about Jesus, and they're doing just fine. When I logged off, deleted the app, Ashley, she goes, "Oh, did you feel that?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "The whole world just mourned their loss." I said, "Girl, get out of here with that mess." And so the world's just fine, even without me on social media. But like my world has gotten so much smaller and so much better since deleting social media. There's things that I miss, like I miss connecting with people. I'm like a crazy extrovert, pretty high relational capacity. I love connecting with all sorts of people. And I miss that. But now like I pray a lot more for friends in my city that don't know Jesus, and I'm more mindful of their lives because I'm not thinking about 2,000 people a week. And so I'm cutting down more at 33 than I was at 28 on secular inputs. There's still a few shows that I watch that are like brain checkouts for me. I'm now watching more college football, which is weird, but it's kind of this like pure form of entertainment that like I can talk about with my friends. I've never been an athletics guy. Like I was a marching band nerd. Yeah. And so it's a special place. And so there's the answer. I don't know if that answered your question. I'm doing less and it's better. That's probably a biblical principle. Like, don't be conformed to patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's Romans, and it's true. So if I'm watching secular media, there's actually a prayer before intaking media. Then I want to make sure that it's not like, that it's at least going to attach me to a better story. So like I annually watch The Lord of the Rings, extended edition, all 6. Like that's part of how I worship God. But that's because like Tolkien knew what he was doing. Like he was playing out the gospel in a beautiful world of storytelling. So there is media I consume that is not Christian, and then every now and then I listen to Taylor Swift. So what else? One more. Maybe 2 more. Here we go. Okay. Nathaniel.
Aside from like praying and reading the Bible, what have been some not necessarily practical ways that you have tried to like take that hour of time with the Lord?
Okay, yes. I'm so glad you asked that because I forgot to mention this. I'm a big guy. I recognize that. I'm working on it. Some annual disciplines of our church are helpful in that department. Exercise for me, physical exercise, is one of the number one places I do most of my repenting. Why? Because I physically feel the cost of my sin. I feel all the brokenness in my life comes out on a bicycle. Like, oh Lord, this is harder than it should be. But when COVID happened and you couldn't do anything, like we went on a family walk almost every day, and just walking, being outside and moving our bodies was like such a good place of connection with the Lord. And so I would say if you don't have any like standard kind of physical exercise routine, even if it's not like getting after it in the gym, but you're just like moving your body, that's one of the primary ways I meet with God. And so I exercise not because I want to be jacked. Clearly that's not working. But because like it helps me connect with Jesus. And so physical exercise is probably like one of the big ones. One more question, then we'll go to lunch. Yes, Julia.
What kind of like advice do you have for someone that's like seeking an answer from God?
Okay. Wow, there's a whole breakout. What advice do I have for someone who's seeking an answer from God? I'll give the shortest version, and because we know each other, we can talk about it more later if you want. Is it black and white in the Bible? I'm guessing probably not. Like I know you well enough to know you probably read the Bible. And so is it black and white in the Bible? Does God talk about this? Like, should I tell my friend about Jesus? Yes, you should. So is it black and white in the Bible? Then I'm going to spend time. Here's how Ash and I make big decisions. We're going to set aside a time to intentional prayer and fasting. Like we're going to devote this time to the Lord, not just for the answer, but for deeper intimacy with Jesus. I think God's going to give me all the clarity I need in intimacy with Jesus. And so maybe not all the clarity I want, but all the clarity I need is going to come from intimacy with Jesus. And so then I'm going to invite a council of friends or people older than me. I'm going to share the thing with them, and I'm going to invite them to join us in the like typically 5 to 7 day period of asking God about this thing. And then I'm going to seek their counsel after that time. So in the 5 to 7 days of like prayer and fasting, we're just seeking God. We just want to hear God's voice. But the Bible is very clear that God speaks through people. And so we'll ask them, let's say like the Woodards are on this team, and Chris Cummings and John James, and then like some old people. And we say, hey, like we want you all to pray. You see, y'all are the young people, aren't you? Amen. And so it's because I'm 3 kids deep, and I'm like right behind you. So I've got to be in the young crowd. So I'll say, here's the thing. We are praying about pursuing foster care and how to do that. Would you take the next 5 to 7 days and pray for us? And then we're going to follow up with you after this. We're going to take time to pray. We'd invite you to fast if you want. But like, would you pray for us in this? And then we're going to like individually ask them for, did you hear anything from God? And or what wisdom do you have before we make this decision? And so, and the Lord's been good. Like every time we've done that, the Lord's made it pretty clear, like, here's what we're supposed to do. What I'm trying to do is slow us down, get as much wisdom as we can, and then make a decision. I'm also not concerned that like God's freaking out about me screwing up the sovereign will of God. So I've made lots of decisions that I think were morally neutral. I think God was like, oh, okay, like here we go. And so does that make sense? There's our pattern. Okay, y'all need to go eat lunch, and I'm going to stop talking. I will stay here, and I would love to answer any other questions you have. Thank y'all so much for coming to our breakout.